Hey folks, welcome. My name is Jake Williams. I am the Director of Cyber Threat Intelligence at SCYTHE. I wanted to talk to you quickly today about cyber insurance. Now, I should start out by noting that I am not a licensed insurance advisor in any state. This is not insurance advice, therefore. I'm also not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, right? Talk to yours in both categories before acting on anything we're discussing here. Okay, why are we talking about cyber insurance? The answer is because the Wall Street Journal is talking about it. And that means your executives are probably going to ask you about it. One of the things that's been noted in an article released, and of course we'll post a link to the article in the YouTube video, is that the overall rates have increased, or the premiums specifically, have increased by 92% over the last year. 92% year over year increase. All right, that is substantial, particularly when cyber insurance is a fairly significant line item for a lot of organizations. And so when you step back and think about this as part of your security budget, you can see why people would be, well, understandably concerned with a 92% year over year increase. So wanted to talk about a couple of things here, around that. One is that obviously I've done a lot of incident response in the past, and I've seen the losses, that cyber insurers are paying out. A lot of folks are like, oh my gosh, why are they raising those rates? Well, a lot of it comes back to how much they're losing relative to meaning direct loss rates, relative to what they bring in. This is an insurance term of art, as it were. Direct loss basically is the proportion of money you're paying out relative to the premiums you're bringing in. That doesn't account for any other costs, whether it's marketing, customer acquisition, employee salaries, right, benefits, etc. And so, if you're looking at direct loss rates, again, they were 72% for cyber insurance in 2020. Right now, I want that to sink in for a second. Imagine if you ran a business, right? Where you were underwriting there, you're bringing in speculative business, by the way, right? So this isn't like, I create a widget, I sell the widget for $1, it costs me 70 cents in supplies to make. No, this is all speculative. You don't know. You clearly need a buffer here. 72% direct loss. And again, that's before we begin including other things like, again, customer acquisition, advertising, benefits, salaries, etc. So that was 2020, 65.4% in 2021. Now, we'd already seen the shift where cyber insurance rates were increasing, but again, clearly not enough. 65.4%, not sustainable, not really sustainable at all. And so there's little doubt that they're trying to push that number back down, understandably so. What we've seen over the last year plus is a little bit of a hardening of the insurance market. There are some folks who themselves are having difficulty getting insured generally. You should probably be planning extensive time to get those policies underwritten. Even renewing an existing policy, not so easy, right? Look, what's really driving this, right? At the end of the day, I think we're all pretty clear. Ransomware is probably the biggest single thing driving this increase. Good news, ransomware is down a little bit over the last I would say probably 6 months, maybe even close to a year. Moving downwards from trending. I guess a year is a little bit too much considering Kaseya, right? But you get the idea here, right? Ransomware generally, I would say from October till now, still a daily news item, but the overall volume of ransomware attacks has taken a little bit of a dip. That said, not enough for cyber insurers, right? And so, of course, we know that's something that's driving the train here. But I do want to quickly talk about, when we think about ransomware itself is an operation, right? We never see in a large-scale ransomware attack, all the ones you see in the news, right, today. You don't see this as a drive-by download. Threat actors get into your environment, and they run effectively, once they've established a beachhead, they run reconnaissance. They follow the cyber kill chain, right? They're running reconnaissance inside your network, right? And then they're looking to go laterally move. They're looking to privilege escalate, and ultimately find basically a privileged position in that network from which to deploy the ransomware. Ransomware doesn't typically come into your environment until the very end stage of the operation. This can be minutes to hours before the actual encryption begins. What does this mean for you? What this means is you need to start thinking about stopping the adversaries before they get to that encryption point. Now, why am I bringing this up in the context of cyber insurance? Well, a couple of reasons, right? One, I've seen a lot of the questionnaires that these folks are using. They're specifically asking for things like, do you have EDR, right? What's your security monitoring posture, right? What's your auditing posture? All this kind of stuff here. One of the things I haven't seen yet, but I expect to see a lot more of, particularly as this year's kind of round of questionnaires levels out, is control validation. Because what we see a lot is we see folks that have an EDR, but they have created redonkulous numbers of exemptions inside the EDR, endpoint detection and response, for those not familiar with the term. And so you'll see whatever that security control is not deployed in a default state, right? Even if it is, not deployed, or sorry, even if it is deployed in a default state, that's not good enough. You want extra on top of that, right? You want detection engineering, picking up specific procedure level threats. Unfortunately, what we see is exactly the opposite in a lot of cases. And I say what we see, what I've seen consistently in my incident response, even when security tooling is in place, it doesn't work the way that that our stakeholders expect to. And in this case, one of our stakeholders, of course, is cyber insurance. I expect to see a lot more focus on security control validation as we start looking at that next round, or maybe even the 2020, late 2022, early 2023 renewals. I do expect some level of assurance from these underwriters, these insurance underwriters, that indeed that your controls are going to pick up what you expect them to. Let me take this separate from cyber insurance generally, though, and say that why wouldn't I want my controls to, or validate that my controls have done the detection that is advertised, and honestly can't think of a good reason, right? All that said, look, I'll close out around the cyber insurance side today, right, and tell you that you need a minimum of 90 days, right, from the time that your policy is set to renew, for you to make your way through the back and forth, right, that you're going to typically experience. 90 days is a minimum, right? Now, again, a lot of times folks are like, oh, don't worry, last time I renewed the policy, no big deal, right? I checked a couple of boxes and we were done. That is the world of the past, right? It used to be almost as easy to get cyber insurance as it was to get, new automobile insurance, right? Check a couple of boxes, you're good, right? That is not the case today. And so you need to be planning around that, because it's a significant time suck, right? Honestly, for your cybersecurity professionals who are going to help complete those underwriting questionnaires. That's one. Secondly, I'll note that when you do get insurance, you're paying a lot more for less, right? At least in my experience working with clients, you're getting a lot more, you're paying a lot more and getting a lot less. And even then, a lot of times you have specific sublimits, right? So what do I mean by paying more and getting less? I mean that you're paying a higher premium ultimately for lower coverage limits, right? Typically higher deductibles as well. So again, meaning that you've got to pay a lot more before this kicks in. And then separately, we're seeing a lot of sublimits being added to policies. What is a sublimit? Well, that means that if I have $2 million of coverage, I might only have $500,000 in coverage for ransomware. Or if I have a $10 million policy, I have a very specific $1 million sublimit for ransomware. And that's where we see sublimits being put in a lot is ransomware. There's also some questions around active war exclusions. I don't, I'm not the lawyer here to really talk intelligently about those. But again, this is the spot where you want your insurance agent or anybody advising you around that to be at least aware of those, and of course, legal counsel to be aware as well. But I do want to highlight here again, we're paying more and getting less, right? With higher deductibles, this means that a lot of incidents that we might have gone to cyber insurance for in the past, we're not going for anymore, right? Likewise, when you talk to your broker, and again, I'm not a broker, this is not insurance advice, right? But a lot of them have told me, they're like, man, if you file a claim on your cyber insurance, good luck renewing that policy, period. Right? And so I suspect that a lot of organizations are being told the same. And what that means then is that they're absorbing losses that previously they might have gone to cyber insurance for, because it's not the big one, right? And they're waiting, they're like keeping that policy, that rainy day fund for the big one. And dare I say, folks, right? This is a spot where purple teaming and particularly, purple teaming, as well as, again, security control validation, because that is like the essence of purple teaming, as it were, becomes such a critical item here, right? If I know that I have to absorb every loss up to $100,000 or up to $250,000, right, or whatever that is, whatever our organizational risk tolerance is before we trigger cyber insurance, if I know I have to absorb every one of those, I really have to place more focus on, dare I use the words here, but shifting left in the compromise, right? So I need to be as close to boom as possible for detection. We can't stop all booms. I'm not about to pretend that's the case. But I do need to detect quickly and respond quickly so that I minimize that loss, right? Again, because these smaller losses, right, that again, we might have gone to cyber insurance for a couple of years ago. Let's call it that $150,000, $200,000 loss. I wasn't necessarily ready to write that off as just all our funds, 5 years ago. I'd have gone to cyber insurance, right? And maybe paid a $50,000 deductible, right? But that other $150K out of that $200K loss, again, that was something I expected cyber insurance to eat, right? I don't anymore, right? And so it's got to truly be, for me, something approaching my policy limit or in the 7 figures before I'm really thinking about going to cyber insurance, knowing that, if I do otherwise, I'm unlikely to get renewed, right? And so, again, at least per what I'm hearing from brokers. And again, I can't highlight enough how important it then becomes for you to do better security control validation, right? Better purple teaming, right? Now, again, I wouldn't be doing good marketing for SCYTHE if I didn't mention that we do all of that between the platform and then obviously professional services. If you don't know how to run a purple team engagement, by all means, attend one of our free workshops, free, right? Free as in beer workshops, where we have you actually driving the platform. Although again, the techniques, right? Learn how to do purple teaming, right? And then if you want to come and use the platform, we think that it's the best out there. We think it makes that all easy. But come to one of the free workshops, learn how to use it, or learn generally how to do purple teaming for that matter. Anyway, look, with that, folks, again, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. But final note, right? If you are putting off that insurance renewal, stop, right? Look, you're going to have to start backcasting, as it were, right, from that renewal date, or you're going to be dead in the water without a policy. And we want to talk about risk acceptance, right? You definitely need to start pushing to the left. If your broker has not called you and told you this, right, that you need to start pushing out to the left there, you need that 90 days. I've heard from a couple up to 6 months. 6 months, right? But again, minimum 90 days. You might want to place that call first if you haven't heard from them. Folks, with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. Jake Williams from SCYTHE.